did you ever see those paintings on YouTube that become like banshees? You see, it's like a classic oil painting of a woman, you know, in a beautiful dress and her hair up in a bun, and then all of a sudden it just becomes like this, kind of like this.
Yeah. Oh.
And that's what people can be like. You know, it can take anywhere from I think 2 months to about 2 years for crazy to come out.
2 years. That's really scary to imagine. You could be like, you know, going down the wrong path for 2 years. And, you know, it was interesting. There's something that you posted recently about date long,
marry slow, and divorce fast. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, that's genius. I think that's really freaking genius. I really do. And that there was this other video that you sent me that was absolutely amazing. I listened to the whole thing about the divorce lawyer who was like talking about how marriage
incredible.
is actually, it was brilliant. And I mean, literally, it's true. Like, marriage is an institution from the medieval times.
That's James Sexton. He's an attorney in New York. And he was on a couple shows of some friends of mine, which ended up being like 3-hour broadcasts, which were phenomenal. The one I think I sent you was from Soft White Underbelly. And that guy just, he basically sets up a camera, lighting, a backdrop, has a stool, and then just talks to people while they're sitting on the stool. And that was brilliant. His format is pretty cool because he talks to drug addicts and prostitutes and all this kind of stuff. But I think the interview with James Sexton was out of this world.
Absolutely genius. Like, I mean, at this point, you know, after what I went through, I don't see any reason to ever get married again. I don't see any purpose.
Right.
You know, I would love to find, like we were talking about before the show, you know, I'm open to meeting a man. I don't need a boy toy. I don't need a sugar daddy. I need like somebody that would be like the man to my girl, me, the girl.
Yeah.
And I like wearing dresses. I like, you know, asking an opinion and then respecting the opinion. You know, like even right now, I mean, it sounds weird, but I'm going to say it anyway. You know, I ask my son, I'm like, Matt, what do you think of this? You know, do you think this is a good idea? Because he's become kind of like the man of the house. And, you know, some people would think that's very backward or anti-feminist or whatever. But like, you know, two things. I think children are the evolution of us. And also, you know, he isn't subjected to all the crazy shit that like, you know, us girls are, like hormones everywhere and our brains all like, oh, but this looks good. But that like squirrel brain kind of thing. Like he's really good at like focusing, getting the idea, getting it done, da-da-da. And I think that's one of the benefits that men, that's a talent that men have more than women by far. So, and I think that's something that, you know, I will want in my life ultimately. But like literally, I want somebody who is a real like grown up man who, you know, I don't have to like finish raising him, help him get out of his mommy's basement, and like none of that kind of stuff, you know. But and I don't expect any man to like, you know, think that he has to come to me with like diamonds and jewels and all that other bullshit that like all these dumb women in the United States seem to think are so important. It's like, you know, that shit that can get lost in 2 minutes. You know, what counts is like the connection that you have with another human being. And I really appreciate your show and the fact that you're actually empowering men again, finally. And, you know, a lot of the women that come and comment, you know, they're like me, they're kind of timid because it's like, you know, I hope I'm not going to get like, you know, reprimanded for commenting on something, you know, in a men's only kind of forum. But, you know, I do want to give like proper support where it's needed. And I think that there's a beauty in the fact that we are male and female. I think there's a beauty in that. And the more we allow that, the better off we're all going to be.
When she was dressing and acting more feminine, the more masculine of a man that she would attract. And she actually, because what makes a relationship work is polarity, a masculine man and a feminine woman. If a woman is a boss babe, what man wants a boss babe? You know what I'm saying? I was interviewing a woman, and I'm going to upload this video tomorrow. Martine DeLuna. She's a woman's coach. And she said in Southeast Asia, she was talking particularly Japanese women who are in the corporate world. As soon as they come home, as soon as they walk in the door, their tone changes. Literally, they become softer, more feminine to their husbands. On the job, they got to get the work done. They got to be assertive, et cetera, et cetera. But as soon as they walk in the door, it's like instant submission, not instant slavery. Big difference. And when I say submission, being subject to the love of their husbands. I mean, what woman wouldn't want to be subject to the love of her man? That's how I look at it. But she found that the more feminine that the more quality men were attracted to her.
I can believe that. I can totally believe that. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the key too. Like after, a life of different crazy things, I want all just quality people in my life, men and women. And, I'm so content with, I hope you don't hear my dogs barking downstairs. Do you?
I do, but that's okay.
But I'm just totally content to be, here and create art and, be with my little doggies and my kitties and talk to my kids and hang out with my friends and just, I'm not going to seek, I'm going to receive. And I think that's one of the things too, that, as a woman, I don't want to be on some dating site or anything. I just want to be there and be receptive, be open to whatever, but, also discriminating as well. The one thing I've learned after all these years of some crazy chaos is either you discriminate for yourself or life will do it for you. And it's a lot more painful when life does it to you.
Yeah.
I think on the bad side, there were a lot of women who may have been a little bit psychologically off, who maybe had always thought if they spread their legs, they'd be able to use that to get somewhere. And then when it didn't get them somewhere, that made them really angry. And they just harbored that resentment for really long. And then when Me Too came out, it was like, ooh, here's my chance to collect. It's a theory. I don't know. I might be wrong, but that is what's behind sapiosexual. And that was, I really wanted to, and a male director couldn't do this. You wouldn't be allowed to, you'd get crucified. But I thought, okay, as a woman, I could do it. And I could make my character, the ultimate villain. And, I've met women that are this fucked up. I've met them.
Psycho bitches, as you would say.
Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%. And so when Breaking Glass came to me and they said, can you do this movie for under $20,000? And I was like, okay, maybe. And then I remembered how Steven Soderbergh had shot movies on iPhone. There was a movie that I did years ago called Confidence Game. It was all shot on the Red, and we got through everything, and then we realized we needed 4 scenes that we could not get. There was no money. So at the time I had the iPhone 8X Max Plus Pro, blah, blah, whatever. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of research and see how Steven Soderbergh did it. I downloaded this app that lets you shoot in 24p. It was up to 3K at that point, but now you can go up to 4K. And with the newest iPhones, you can even shoot ProRes, which is what the Alexa does. So,
let me ask you this. Explain to the audience. Now, most people in the audience don't know what shooting on the Red means. I know what that means. Explain that to the audience. So
shooting on a Red is pretty much like shooting a big old-fashioned 35mm camera. It's a giant camera. It has to have an assistant to help carry it, another guy to pull the focus, the same amount of lighting as you need on a feature that's shot with a giant old-fashioned Panavision 35mm camera. I mean, the whole idea of digital cinema originally was it was born around the time Dogma 95 happened, back in 1996, 1997, when that movie Celebration came out, and they shot it on, I think it was the VX1000 or the Canon, but it was one of the first mini DV cameras, and they shot it with very little light. They had a whole manifesto about how they would make these movies, and the idea was, you take great scripts with great actors, you keep the location small, and you just tell your fucking story. You don't
right.
wait around for someone to give you $1 million or something like that, because, you know, especially in the economy we're living in now, that is not going to happen. The DP, the director of photography, the woman who shot with the original Red camera, all the other films, she was there for the screening. She did not know when this thing was projected on a 30-foot screen. She did not know that those shots that I went and did were done on an iPhone. And that to me was a defining moment. I was like, all right, game on, let's do this.
Yeah.
So I started doing a lot of directing and producing of event videos. Like this guy would do an event, and I was in there to pitch the fact that, like, okay, well, an event is like theater, and unless you've got video to prove that it happened, it's all gone. It's all done when it's over. So I was able to make a pretty decent amount of money for a few years doing that, and I took a bunch of the money and shot my series Crazy Town, the strip club series, which is coming out probably on Vudu or Tubi or something like that in the next couple of months. They're working on the final trailers for it, but we shot it completely on iPhone, all of it. And people
really,
yes,
I remember when you sent me the links to that, I was like, that was shot on an iPhone? No kidding.
Like 3 iPhones, and that was back when that was the iPhone 10X Max Pro. Yeah. So, you know, and nobody knew it's 4K. We had, you know, external recorded sound, and I shot an entire first season, cross-boarding episodes. So, like, you know, everything that was in the bedroom for episodes 1, 5, 6, and 7 would all be shot, you know, on one day in 3 hours. And that was the beauty of it too. By shooting on iPhone, like, there's so little time between setups. The actors really stay in it. So there's like an opportunity to really do a ton of improvisation and really getting into the acting and finding, like, exploring things like, oh, can I try this? And it's like, sure, why not? I mean, who cares? It's like right here. And then when that went well, and then Breaking Glass asked me to make this movie, and I thought, okay, this is going to be the ultimate experiment. And I'm going to do this on 3 of the most high-end iPhones I can get right now, which it was the 13X Max Pro, which does, like I said, the ProRes, which is the Apple standard, which, you know, the bigger cameras use that codec. But we just did it, and we did it in 5 days. And the only way we could do that was by doing it with iPhones. We did not have a lot of time. We had 15 minutes between setups. It was like, come on, let's do this. Okay, let's do that. And then let's try this. And let's try this shot. And then even the very last shot of the film, as I was telling you before, was originally, I just did it as a test to say, okay, well, this is what I want. Like, you know, so I don't have to explain to anybody what I want for the last shot of the film. I'm going to shoot this. And so I did it. I set it up, you know, and then it worked. I cut it in, and I'm like, well, I guess we don't need to shoot that because I shot it all by myself, totally by myself. And so
did you have external microphones? Did you use shotgun mics, a boom? Did you mic people up? What did you do?
Yeah. We used a Zoom mic, the recorder, and then everybody had lavaliers, and we also had a boom. Mm-hmm. That's, I mean, you have to, because the iPhone sound, sometimes the iPhone sound is really good if it's very close, but yeah, a lot of times it doesn't work. So, I mean, 98% of the time it's not good enough. It's not a high enough quality, but you know, I waited until we got reviews. I waited until people saw the film. I waited because I wanted to see if anybody, you know, would complain about, like, the way it looks or this or that. And when I saw a couple of the reviews say, and it's shot so well, I was like, okay, it's going to be time. We got to come out. We got to tell the truth now, because, you know, I didn't want this to be marketed initially as an iPhone film, because then people would just like say, oh yeah, I could tell, you know?
Right.
And I didn't want that. I wanted people to, like, get caught up in the story, and I wanted to prove my point. Like, it's time to bring back Dogma 95. You don't need $500,000 to make a movie. You don't even need $100,000 to make a movie. You need a great script, great actors, and go, and just go and use your imagination. I mean, there's so much technology that is available to us that is not expensive. We can get 98% of the shit you can get on Amazon.
Right.
the steady cams, the sliders, the even just like sometimes all you need, because an iPhone is so tiny and not heavy, even though now that they're getting bigger and like 2 terabytes, they're heavier, but you still need something that's going to like, balance it and make it feel like have that weight so you can follow things and have it be smooth.
Right.
But it's totally doable.
How much post was done after everything was shot?
Well, we shot it in May and June of 2022, and it was completely finished by December.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it was just about like breaking glass, being able to get it in the queue for, putting it on Amazon and iTunes and all that stuff. And, those guys, there's like all that crap, that the back of the house stuff that I don't want to know about.
I could see you actually being interviewed by the guy that does Soft White Underbelly, who did the James Sexton. I would love to see you sitting on a stool, a spot on you, that crinkly brown backdrop, dressed, sexy, hair just killing it, makeup killing it, and him just talking to you about filmmaking. I could see that happening.
I would love that. That would be awesome. That would be amazing. I would love that. That guy seems really cool. And
I have a question for you. Are you free to talk about Trailblazers at all?
Yes.
Okay. What happened there? I had my hopes. I mean, my fingers were crossed for you and that entire crew. That was an all-star cast. Like so much of, I got so hooked on it. What happened?
Where shall I begin?
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
I mean, and who really gets thrown under the bus here?
Yeah, right.
I think anything that tries to make us live in fear is trying to keep us from a potential greatness. On the other side of fear, there's always something massively better.
Yeah.
We just have to be willing to see what that might be.
Soul mirror. I like soul mirror better than soul mate.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, to me, I like to think of us as soul groups. And so like, I feel like Dean and I had a karmic contract, but clearly you and I have a karmic bond. Like, I think you're one of my soulmates. You're one of my soul family. There's a handful of people that are part of my soul family that I feel are, you could say twin flames, soulmates, all these other things. And yes, that's all true, but not necessarily in like the only one. And, there can be no other. No, I think we have many. And I think our job on this planet is to find our soul tribe. That's what
I've always said I think there's about 7 people that are kind of a soul mirror, soul mate-ish, because I'm not a huge believer in soulmates or the traditional definition of soulmates. I mean, you and I have almost finished each other's sentences at one point or another, which is, I've just have come to accept that. It just like, I've just rested in that, where I can just communicate with you any time of day or night. I mean, we're texting back and forth at midnight at times, and it's not intrusive or anything like that.
Not at all. No, it's just, it's almost like an unspoken agreement. Yeah. On a soul level. And I think that's very comforting.
I like that. Unspoken agreement. Yeah. Yeah.
And, those are your people. When you find the people that you have those unspoken agreements with, that it's just natural and easy and clean. It's like a clean connection. Like there's no, I'm trying to get this from you, or you're trying to get this from me. I mean, it's literally like we come together and we collaborate on ideas, and
we do.
Yeah,
we do a lot of collaborating. That is, it's funny because I went out to eat tonight. Well, I usually go out to eat on Friday nights by myself. About halfway through the meal, I thought to myself, because I was thinking, I was at about 5 o'clock, and I thought to myself, I should just shoot up the Garden State Parkway and do this with you live in your kitchen or in your living room. And I was thinking, oh, that would be great. It would end up being like a 4-hour broadcast, but I got to work early tomorrow morning, and I'm thinking, oh shit, there's no damn way that's going to happen tonight. So I almost jumped in the truck and came up tonight. So
you know what we could do? Remember that movie, My Dinner with Andre? Andre Gregory and Wally Shawn, and it's like from the 70s. The only reason I know about it is because Dean's best friend from before we got together was Nick Gregory, who is Andre Gregory's son. And Andre Gregory and Wally Shawn did this movie where literally they're sitting there for 90 minutes at a dinner table having a conversation about life. And people loved it. But I was like, we could set up 2 iPhones on, tripods.
I had
we could literally, you and I could like have this conversation and eat dinner together and hang out, have wine. Yeah. Totally. And then, I mean, I've got all these extra bedrooms. Like you could totally sleep over, no problem.
Yeah.
The bathroom's a little funky, but I'm working on that.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost grabbed the tripod, and I was that far from it, and I thought I got to get up so early tomorrow morning. So,
damn.
Anyways,
do you do that every Saturday?
Tomorrow I'm working pretty early. Tomorrow I'm working early, but that's not every Saturday. So sometimes I don't go to work until noon on Saturdays. So, but that almost happened tonight. So we'll have to do a rain check on that.
Oh, and I could totally there's a great restaurant about a block and a half from me. And I'm friends with the owner, and we could like set up in his back room, and still like there would be nobody else there. So it looks like a restaurant, and candles on the table, waitress, the whole thing, and good food, good wine. Yeah, it would be fun. And like literally do a live that way. We could have a series of that. And then like as we move down and like we're totally like so in our zone, and we'll bring people that are like, a little bit more controversial.
Right.
Like rapid fire question them.
Right. That could be fun. Fun.
Yeah, totally. I would love that.
In the next year, you have this horror film coming up. What is it with the attraction to horror films? Now, some people have asked me, why do I like horror films? I don't know why. I don't, it's been said that people who've had, like if anyone is in the audience, if you ever had anyone murdered in your family, there is this strange obsession with blood and death. And I've known people, and when I used to work as a therapist, there were people who would just watch horror movie after a loved one was murdered. And I used to run this group, and I thought, how fascinating is that? How fascinating that they were watching just slasher film after slasher film after a brother was murdered, after a father was killed or something like that. Absolutely fascinating. And I had to search my own soul. Like, why do I love horror films? I used to love, I love the monsters. I love the classic Hollywood monsters. I like Vincent Price, huge Vincent Price fan. And I wasn't so much into the like slasher kind of films as I am into like horror, like true horror where you don't see stuff. Like to me, I think like Cloverfield was a great movie because you didn't see a lot of the monster. It was more about what you don't see, and it was about the terror. I enjoy Ari Aster's.
Do you remember The Others with Nicole Kidman?
Unbelievable. Yes, like that kind of stuff. I enjoyed Paranormal Activity. I enjoyed Insidious. I enjoyed Blair Witch Project when that first came out. Because that really was about what you don't see. That was about what could be just beyond the sight of the camera, or something like in the bottom corner of the camera. When I look at Ari Aster's, are you familiar with Ari Aster? He did Midsummer. He did Hereditary. To me, which like my favorite horror film, one of my favorite horror films of all time is called The Witch. I don't know if you ever saw The Witch. Holy cow! That's all I'm going to say. It is one of the best. It's like the best mood. As a matter of fact, I have never seen lighting like that since The Exorcist. back in '74 or something like that.
Really?
It's the best lighting. Yeah, and the actress, the father in the film, one of the best voices I've ever heard. I'm a big voice guy. I just got a thing for voices. One of the best voices I've ever heard. But the daughter in this film is this actress Anya something. And you know what I'm talking about? Young girl.
Anya Taylor, the one that was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
The one
this
that
was
played
when she.
Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah. Now she was much younger and she was just a child in this, but she was creepy as hell in
Right.
this. Just really. But that and Hereditary, with Toni Collette, I think are two of the best modern horror films I have ever seen. You and I we're gonna live to 105. We are.
105. Let's go 130, man. Come on.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Like we had talked about a few months ago, a year from now, you're going to be completely different. You're going to be literally, Deborah 2.0 will be emerging from a cocoon, so to speak. Well, speaking of beef, then we're going to have a steak then too. So.
Oh yeah. Well, this place that I want to take you, you got to look it up. Fitzgerald's. It's in Glen Ridge. And they make great steak. I mean, my mouth is watering. I'm like craving steak.
Definitely, we'll be cutting some steak and clinking some wine glasses. We're talking about Deborah's films tonight. The latest one shot on an iPhone, and it's available on Tubi, Tubi, Tubi.tv, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. And you register at Tubi, and you can just type in her name. And everything that she's associated with will just will drop down. So you'll see a bunch of stuff. And is Breaking Glass your main distribution channel?
Oh yeah, they're the only people I trust right now at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't. And when you find people you trust in distribution, it's really hard to imagine going anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I don't even know if Sony came along and said, "Oh, we want to put your film out." I'm like, really?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Let me ask you this, and we'll wrap it up with this. Were you ever hoping to be found? It worked for me. It worked. Doing my own thing worked because I was so freaking tired of other people making a decision whether I would make money or not. Tired of it. And I know you've been in many audition lines. I know you have. I know you've sent out, if you're like me, and I know you are, you've sent out a bazillion headshots. I know that. I know you've sent out a million resumes and you have your fingers crossed. Did any of that discourage you and say, fuck it, I'm doing my own thing?
Yes. I remember the very, very day it happened. It was 1989, and I had read Backstage, and I just gotten to New York, and one of the things that my dad said to me, because I'd gotten into NYU and I came there to study acting, and my dad was like, look, I'm really concerned that if acting doesn't work out, what are you going to do? I don't want you to be like a waitress or drive a cab. And I was like, Daddy, don't worry, I'll just make my own movies. And he was like, you don't know how to do that. I was like, I'll figure it out. And so it was 1989, and there was this call they had for some soap opera, like one of the last soaps that was in New York, and they were looking for a new female lead. So I showed up at this thing, and I had my headshot, my resume, and when I got there, and I was early, and there were already 300 women around the block, all looked like me. And I was just like, this is fucking stupid. And I got in the line and I stood there and I just heard their like dumb girl chatter where they're like, oh, it's and all this high pitched noise that I could tell is like, it's like the signal that they're being totally fake and like they're all insecure and fucked up.
Yeah.
And I just stood there and I felt like such an outsider. And I was like, this is nothing like what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I asked myself, I was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to go home. I want to write and I want to make my own stuff. And then I was like, then fucking do it. And so I went to the front of the line. I gave my headshot to the people at the desk. I was like, I'm sorry, I have an appointment. And I walked away. And I felt so good. And I went home and I started writing. And
that's your Batman origin story.
Yeah. But it was so funny. I mean, I didn't even, it was always in the back of my mind that that's what I would do. But that was the moment that I was like, no, I'm not. And especially, the chattering girls and the ones like that they knew each other, and you could totally tell they hated each other and they're in competition, but they're like, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And I'm like,
yeah,
I will never be fake. I will never be like you. All right, I need to like find a different path, and it's not going to be like anything. And a funny thing I have to tell you. So back in 2010, 2009, something like that, I went to this woman who now is doing these things in New York. And I'd already made tons of my own movies and written things and had stuff in development. And I met with her. I was like, I need to, I've got little kids. I need to get more acting work. And she's like, oh, well, how much network stuff do you have? I was like, well, I have some.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. And everybody make sure to check out Deborah Twist in her latest film called Sapiosexual, which is on Tubi, Tubi, and you register on Tubi, and then you can watch these films. And I'll give you the last word, Deborah.
When are we getting together?
It almost happened tonight. I was that far from coming up. So sooner than later.
Okay, good. That's my last word. That's all I need to know.
Excellent. Great. All right, Deborah, have a great night. We'll stay in touch. And thank you to my audience for watching tonight. And I appreciate every last one of you. There's a lot of choices that people have on YouTube, but you chose to spend a couple minutes with me and Deborah. And for that, we are thankful. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, George. Mwah. Have a great night.